Good morning to the House. Good morning to our listeners, and especially good morning to all of those who support the East. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to advise my colleagues in this honorable House of events taking place this month to recognize the 185th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, the history of Bermudians of African descent did not begin with slavery and did not end with slavery. Thus, the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs Emancipation Committee has over the years centered its program offerings on educating our people not only about the important history of resistance to slavery, such as the conspiracy of 1761, the trial of Sally Bassett, and the poisoning conspiracies of the late 1720s, but also on our history before slavery, including research by Boston University professors Drs. Thornton and Haywood, indicating the Anglican roots of the original African Bermudian population, as well as the post-emancipation contributions of Black Bermudians, including the role of our friendly societies, the significance of Black entrepreneurship, and the 5-year trail of our program that charted the contributions of unsung champions who supported the Black community through the post-abolition and segregation eras. There's a long and rich history that we pull from, and these are the stories that Bermudians need to know and claim as a way of bolstering a sense of national pride, identity, and purpose. Mr. Speaker, this year's commemorations focus on the legacy of Mary Prince, who is not only a Bermuda national hero, but who was also an internationally recognized abolitionist whose narrative provided a clarion call for the emancipation of all those held captive under the inhumane practices of chattel slavery throughout the British Empire. Her slave narrative, The History of Mary Prince, does not document a benign life as a slave in Bermuda. And I'm providing today all members of this honorable House with a copy of her book as essential reading. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to read a few paragraphs of her experiences to highlight that there was nothing benign about slavery in Bermuda. With your permission, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Thank you. I got a sad fright that night. I was just going to sleep when I heard a noise in my mistress's room, and she presently called out to inquire if some work was finished that she had ordered Hetty to do. "No, ma'am, not yet," was Hetty's answer from below. On hearing this, my master started up from his bed, and just as he was in his shirt, ran downstairs with a long cow skin in his hand. I heard immediately after the cracking of the thong, and the house rang to the shrieks of poor Hetty, who kept crying out, "Oh, massa, massa, me dead, massa, have mercy upon me, don't kill me outright." This was a sad beginning for me. I sat up upon my blanket, trembling with terror like a frightened hound, and thinking that my turn would come next. At length, the house became still, and I forgot for a little while all my sorrows by falling asleep. The next morning, my mistress sat about instructing me in my tasks. She taught me to do all sorts of household works, to wash and bake, pick cotton and wool, wash floors and cook. And she taught me, how can I ever forget it, more things than these. She caused me to know the exact difference between the smart of the rope, the cart whip, and the cow skin when applied to my naked body by her own cruel hand. And there was scarcely any punishment more dreadful than the blows I received on my face and head from her hard, heavy fist. She was a fearful woman and a savage mistress to her slaves. Not quite finished. Poor Hetty, my fellow slave, was very kind to me, and I used to call her my aunt, but she led a most miserable life, and her death was hastened. At least the slaves all believed and said so, by the dreadful chastisement she received from my master during her pregnancy. It happened as follows. One of the cows had dragged the rope away from the stake to which Hetty had fastened it and got loose. My master flew into a terrible passion and ordered the poor creature to be stripped quite naked, notwithstanding her pregnancy, and to be tied up to a tree in the yard. He then flogged her as hard as he could lick, both with the whip and cowskin, till she was all over streaming with blood. He rested and then beat her again and again. Her shrieks were terrible. The consequence was that poor Hetty was brought to bed before her time and was delivered after severe labor of a dead child. She appeared to recover after her confinement, so far that she was repeatedly flogged by both master and mistress afterwards, but her former strength never returned to her. Ere long her body and limbs swelled to a great size, and she lay on a mat in the kitchen till the water burst out of her body, and she died. All the slaves said that death was a good thing for poor Hetty, but I cried very much for her death. The manner of it filled me with horror. I could not bear to think about it. Yet it was always present to my mind for many a day. Mr. Speaker, that was just read to let people know the atrocities of slavery. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs has partnered with Titan Express to offer a historical bus tour providing highlights of Mary Prince's autobiography, visiting 3 of the sites that she mentioned in her books. This tour is running throughout the month of July, and as it stands, those tours are already sold out. So we have put on 4 more tours for the month of August. We congratulate Rashida Godwin and her team at Titan Express for developing this kind of offering. Given the level of public interest and value to cultural tourism, we thank Titan for considering the extension of the tours into August and hopefully throughout the year. Mr. Speaker, part of the history of Black Bermudians has been about recognizing our connection to those throughout the African diaspora. This connection has perhaps been most clear to our historians and artists. The Dr. Kenneth E. Robinson Cyril Outerbridge Packlet Memorial Lecture honoring 2 of our most insightful historians has now entered its 14th year, and Tuesday night featured a talk on the African-American poet Langston Hughes. The talk offered by Stanford University Professor Emeritus Dr. Arnold Rampersad was followed by a second lecture last night by Dr. Rampersad entitled Writing Our Lives, focusing on the importance of autobiography, memoir, and biography, Mary Prince's narrative being a key example. Mr. Speaker, the events relating to the Emancipation Committee are important, but what might sometimes be overlooked is the vital research that the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs funds so that we might know more about the depth and breadth of our history. In 2017-18, the department funded a research project by Dr. Margot Madison McFadden on the latter days of Mary Prince. Since, as vital as Prince's story is to our national narrative, we have had little information about what happened to our hero following the publication of her book. Mr. Speaker, these findings, which have already been shared with a number of schools during Education Month in February, will now be made known to the public in a lecture by Dr. Madison McFadden on July 25th at the Earl Cameron Theater. Let me just mention that that is a free lecture, Mr. Speaker. This talk will conclude with a dance performance entitled A Woman Named Prince, choreographed by Conchita Ming, performed by Ariel Lee Ming and the Anointed Wings of Fire. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, as well as the individuals who comprise the Emancipation Advisory Committee, are to be commended for these excellent offerings. It is my hope that these events will strengthen our understanding of who we are, where we come from, and the strength of the shoulders that we all stand upon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.